जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी गोपीजना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरावनचारी यमुना तीरावनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी गोपीजना वल्लभ गिरिवरधारी यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजन यमुना तीरावनचारी यमुना तीरावनचारी राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे हरे राम हरे राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम राम हरे हरे जय विष्णुपाद परम से परिवार का आचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्रीमद भाई चरणानंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी प्रभुपाद की जय जय विष्णुपाद परम से परिवार का आचार्य अष्टोत्तर श्रीमद भक्ति सिद्धांत सरस्वती गोस्वामी महाराज प्रभुपाद की जय अनंत कोटि वैष्णव की जय नमाचार्य श्री हरिदास ठाकुर की जय प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासदि गौर भक्तवृंद की जय श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोविंद गोपीनाथ श्याम कुंड राधा कुंड गिरी गोवर्धन की जय वृंदावन मथुरा धाम की जय मायापुर नवदीप धाम की जय गंगा माई की जय जमुना माई की जय नर्मदा माई की जय भक्ति देवी की जय श्रीमती तुलसी महारानी की जय संवेद पूर्ण भक्त वृंद की जय निताय 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 गौर प्रेमानंद हरि हरि बोल ओम विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भद्रेश मद भक्ति का नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्ण प्रेष्ठाय भद्रेश मद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय ओम अज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाखया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूपगदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकं वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरुं श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुन् वैष्णवां श्रीशूभं सागरजातं सगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सगणिता विशाखान्वितांश्च नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिविकासस्वामिन्निति नामिने नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिनिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देश तारिणे जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवासादि कम करति वाचलं लंगायते गिरिमित कृपातु महामंते श्री गुरु नित्यानंद श्री चैतन्य ईश्वरम Hare Krishna devotees, welcome everybody to yet another session on online reading of the book Mothers and Masters written by His Holiness Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj. So we are continuing to read. We are in page number 114 from the topic from the chapter Women, Mothers or Masters, Masters or Mothers, section 1, and the topic is Women should be married. Grihasthas, not sannyasis, should protect them. So we'll continue to read from there. So I would like to wish to ask devotees if they are able to hear. Am I audible to everybody? Yes, you can. Okay. Okay. So then I will start reading. Women should be married. Grihasthas, not sannyasis, should protect them. The Vedic social institutions of brahmacharya, grihastha, vanaprastha, and sannyas are defined largely according to the levels of interaction between male and female. Only in grihastha life is there some allowance for extended association between man and woman. In Grihamedi culture, which largely defines Western society today, there is no restriction regarding how much a husband and wife may interact. But among Vedic grihasthas, even association between husband and wife was limited. Traditionally, family elders would not allow the young married members to mix very much. Men and women did not go shopping, partying, playing, dating together, and even if they work together, example in agricultural fields, they would usually do so in separate groups. Srila Prabhupada said, "Woman is good, man is good. When they combine together, bad." Nevertheless, we factually see that many householder couples are working together cooperatively in Krishna consciousness, with the wife encouraging the husband spiritually. So, under certain conditions, the combination can be good. Under certain conditions, the combination can be good. The first condition is that association with women is allowed only for grihasthas. When protected, women as a class remain an always auspicious source of energy to man. Therefore, according to Vedic culture, a girl must be married. A major reason why all women should become married is to afford their protection. Upon attaining puberty, a girl needs a mate. If the females are not obliged to marry and instead are misguidedly afforded the freedom to remain independent and unprotected, they thus become potential victims of exploitation, with the result that they will produce bad progeny. Vedic culture does not allow such freedom to women. Okay, there is a footnote. There are two kinds of householders. One is called Grihamedi and the other is called Grihastha. The object of the Grihamedi is sense gratification. The object of Grihastha is self-realization. Shrimad Bhagavatam 3.32.1 purport. Any more than it does to children, as both classes are incapable of properly utilizing it. Because only Grihasthas are allowed to associate with women, protection of women is meant for Grihastha men, not others. It is an abomination and a major embarrassment to ISKCON if any of its sannyasis keeps a woman as a constant companion, as a de facto wife. Sorry, I got an urgent call. हाँ प्रभु हरे कृष्णा. Sorry. Women in Bengal. Srila Prabhupada was leading a proponent of Indian culture, which may also be called Hindu culture or Vedic culture. हरे कृष्णा. प्रणाम प्रभु. प्रभु बताइए अर्जेंट है क्या? मैं ऑनलाइन क्लास में हूँ. Women in Bengal. Srila Prabhupada was leading proponent of Indian culture, which may also be called Hindu culture or Vedic culture. He particularly promoted the essence of that culture, which is spiritual knowledge and commensurate behavior. Yet, as with any major cultural genre, Indian culture is not uniform and there are many variations according to region, caste, religious subsects, and so forth. Gaudiya culture, the form of Vaishnavism that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu inaugurated, has always encouraged spontaneity of expression, which is particularly evident when contrasted to the rather strayed ritualistic forms of Vaishnavism of South India. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement is intimately linked with Bengali culture and is thus undoubtedly a causative factor for the openness and liberality among Bengalis in their social dealings as compared to other parts of India. Of course, it is not a general free for all in Bengal as in other parts of India. Extramarital sexual relationship considered disgraceful. Another major cultural influence in Bengal is the worship of Shakti, the primeval energy in the form of Durga or Kali. In Shakti worship, all women are supposed to be seen as representative of goddess and are themselves revered as goddesses. This is another important influence in attitudes toward and behavior of women in Bengal. Women in Bengal traditionally have been considered less restricted than, for instance, their counterparts in the Hindi speaking belt of North India, where even today some families consider it respectable for the women folk to mostly stay at home and be soft spoken and demure. For instance, they avoid speaking in presence of men. Although the role of traditional Bengali women is clearly as housewives wives and mothers, they tend to be less reserved and restricted than their sisters in other parts of India. Indeed, they can be very loud, especially when they ululate during religious functions, although they keep their heads covered and stand apart from the men. Devotee women with a woman Western mindset and who are trying to make a transition to the more conservative and restrictive lifestyle within Varnashrama Dharma would do well to study and attempt to emulate Bengali women who can be both chaste and forthright and effusive, yet observant of Maryada, literally a limit translated as dignity, etiquette, etc. Illicit sex in the name of religion. By misapplication of the Gaudiya principles of spontaneity and liberality, several apasampradayas have arisen, claiming allegiance to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu while allowing or encouraging the mixing of men and women under the cover of religious activity. Apasampradaya means deviant religious sect in the footnote. Recently in South India, a bogus guru was exposed as being a pervert. He had told a group of schoolgirls, I don't see any difference between male and female, so let's all dance together. This is typically the reasoning of Prakrita Sahajyas, among whom are so called gurus who keep seva dasis, young widows who willingly become their sexual partners, in a travesty of the sacred relationship between guru and disciple. We members of ISKCON should not think that we cannot fall into such degradation. Indeed, we may already be well on the way, for divorce and remarriage is now treated as normal, and even the stealing of others' wives or sannyasis having de facto wives seem to cause a little consternation. To save oneself from further disgrace, we must properly understand the teachings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Srila Prabhupada and not misapply them in the name of imagined spiritual advancement. Remembering that the big plan of Varnashrama Dharma is to cut down this attraction between male and female, to train the candidates gradually to become free from this entanglement of man and woman. We should follow Varnashrama Dharma rules, which restrict association between men and women and not act beyond the parameters of our actual less than fully realized status. Fire and butter. Srila Prabhupada explained the principle of gender segregation. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that man is like butter and woman is like fire. Okay, there is a footnote. Prakrita Sahajas means deviant devotees who pose as followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, although they indulge in lusty affairs with women. Sevadasis means a maid servant. In Gaudiya usage, this term refers to attendants of Srimati Radharani and thus is grossly misused in connection with mistresses of pseudo gurus. Another footnote, Srila Prabhupada equated remarriage by women to prostitution. For the quote which has become nigh taboo in today's politically correct ISKCON, Sri Srimad Bhagavatam 7.11.28 purport. So, fire and butter. Srila Prabhupada explained the principle of gender segregation. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that man is like butter and woman is like fire. As soon as there is fire and butter, the butter must melt. Therefore, they should be kept aside. And the Shastra says that in solitary place you should not remain even with your daughter, even with your sister, even with your mother. The injunction restricting association with women is the basic principle of spiritual life. Associating or talking with women is never advised in any of the Vedic literatures. Women should be taken care of as daughter, as wife, as mother. No freedom. Then there will be prostitution. Then spoiled the whole thing. Unwanted children, contraceptive, abortion. Very dangerous. In our society, there are girls. They should live separately. They should be given full engagement, taken care of, no mixing. Then it will be spoiled. The example is given: fire and butter. You cannot say the butter will not melt even in the fire. Woman is like fire, and man is like butter. Srila Prabhupada wanted that such separation of fire and butter be instituted within his movement. Women and men should live separately. That is also essential. Butter and fire must be kept apart. Otherwise, the butter will melt. You cannot stop it. Devotee. Srila Prabhupada, in a purport in Srimad Bhagavatam, you say that even 50 years ago in India, the householders had separate quarters in the apartment for men and women, and the husband would not see his wife during the day. Is this the standard we should develop in our movement? Srila Prabhupada, yes, that is good. The example is that butter and fire should be kept as far apart as possible. Otherwise, the butter will melt. The man is butter and the woman is fire. So, this is restricted. Even if the man happens to be father, brother, or son. Matra, swastra, dhitrava. One may say that people will not think of sex impulse in the presence of a daughter, mother, or sister. But the Shastra says no, there is possibility. So they should not sit together. People may say this is only advice for the 10th class rascal. But the next line of the Shastra says no, Vidvam Shvam api karshati. It's not the question of 10th class rascal, but even the first class learned, he may be attracted. Balavan indriya gramo vidwan shvan api karshati. The senses are so strong that they can mislead even the most learned scholar. Even Paramahamsas are cautious about female association. Varnashrama Dharma is to be observed by aspiring transcendentalists and even advanced transcendentalists. Only those devotees who are totally perfect need not adhere to Varnashrama Dharma. Avadutas do not follow any rules or regulations, even of sadhana bhakti, what to speak of varnashrama dharma. For instance, Srila Gaur Kishore Das Babaji did not use counting beads, and Vamshidas Babaji did not chant any rounds, but both strictly followed one regulation: to not mix intimately with women. Among our recent acharyas, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur much decried the sexual malpractices of certain supposed followers of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was similarly extremely strict in such matters. Prior to establishing the Gaudiya Math, he had been active in the Navadip Dham Pracharini Sabha, an association that had been founded by Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. One of the rules of the Sabha was that women are not allowed to take part in any way. In one incident, Srila Prabhupada, at that time, well over 70 years ago, refused to remain alone in a room with his own sister, who also was elderly and a pure devotee of Krishna. After Srila Prabhupada quoted, Matra swastra duhitra va navivikta sano bhaved balavan indriya gramo vidvanshan apikarshati. One should not allow oneself to sit on the same seat even with one's own mother, sister, or daughter, for the senses are so strong that even though one is very advanced in knowledge, he may be attracted by sex. Although clearly on the highest platform of devotional service for the benefit of his disciples, Srila Prabhupada showed the ideal example of precaution in dealing with women. Apart from during the earliest days of ISKCON, Srila Prabhupada mostly kept male disciples around him, not females. This can be attested from the main recordings of Srila Prabhupada's conversations with others, wherein the vast majority of interactions are with men, both disciples and outsiders. So the footnote asterisk mark. See also the first few paragraphs of Feminism in ISKCON, page number 65 and 66. 65, 66. Devotees must reject feminism. As anyone who reads his books cannot fail to note, Srila Prabhupada advocated traditional Vedic roles and duties for women and was solidly opposed to the notion of women's independence. Although this stance is very difficult for many people to accept, it is fully in accord with Shastra and was enshrined by Srila Prabhupada in his Bhagavad Gita as it is. Those who claim to be followers of Srila Prabhupada are obliged to embrace, preach, and live according to this and all other positions that he espoused. Of course, feminism was not the only modern idea that Srila Prabhupada opposed. According to the famous Bhagavatam verse, Tadvag Visargo Janataga Viplavaha, the broadcasting of the transcendental descriptions of the Supreme Lord is directed toward bringing about a revolution in the empire's lives of the world's misdirected civilization. From the perspective of the Bhagavatam, modern civilization is misdirected, and accordingly, all of its institutions, values, and customs must also be understood as misdirected. Hence, it is no surprise that almost all of Srila Prabhupada's social teachings militate against all that is considered politically correct by the regnant world order. Srila Prabhupada's promotion of Varnashrama Dharma is particularly anathema to egalitarian humanists whose belief, derived from the social theories of Rousseau, Hegel, and Marx, is that class difference is the cause of exploitation, and therefore Varnashrama's hierarchical structure embeds social injustice and stifles individual progress. But in fact, the opposite is true. Without Varnashrama Dharma, people, especially females, will find it nearly impossible to fulfill their natural duties and functions because their minds will be too absorbed in sense gratification and material pursuits to make any serious spiritual advancement. Such absorption spawns persistent dissatisfaction, which cannot be mitigated by the thoroughly misguided ideas concerning gender roles that typify mainstream demonic society. Feminism is motivated by two ideas that our acharyas have identified as the most formidable obstacles to Krishna consciousness. The first is impersonalism. For the impersonal denial or differences between sexes is responsible for the proliferation of mundane sex life. The impersonalist philosophers have given indirect impetus to the abominable mundane sex life because they have overstressed the impersonality of the ultimate truth. Of course, even the most hardened gender feminists do not dispute that there are important differences between the sexes, and they will agree that those differences are important enough to warrant asymmetrical laws. An example is menstrual leave, which is a concession for women but certainly also not also for men, and which enjoys the support of nearly all feminists. But aside from provisions such as this, feminists believe that male and female roles are generally interchangeable due to having been socially constructed, which is a notion of human creation. They disbelieve that there is a natural order to human society. What to speak of natural order sanctioned by God? Indeed, the disestablishment of the concept of fixed human nature is widely considered to be one of the seminal achievements of the Western Enlightenment. The second major fault of feminism is that it directly encourages Sri Sangha, the intermingling of men and women in society at large. Since the goal of feminism is to afford equivalent social, political, and economic opportunities to women as are available to men, a primary objective of feminists is to secure equal access to the same resources that men use. And this means that men and women must intermingle even for trivial, trivial activities. But such intermingling is a great impediment for spiritual advancement because the basis of material existence is the attraction between male and female. The whole material creation is moving under the principle of sex life. Tamodvaram yoshitam sangi sangam. The path to hell is wide open for those who associate with people fond of women and sex. Pumsastriya mithuni bhavametam. The attraction between male and female is the basic principle of material existence. Because feminism encourages social conduct that increases the prevalence of sex indulgence, it further implicates people in material life, thus making it more difficult for them to take up Krishna consciousness, even if they are able to associate with devotees. Western nations have instituted innumerable policies and laws whose purpose is to ensure that women are not subjected to sexual abuse, yet the dulge of sexual abuse continues. And other countries that have been aping the West are now also being plagued by sexual misconduct. Feminism is an evil that devotees should determinedly oppose. Rather than imitating men's duties, women devotees can perform significant preaching by committing themselves to traditional roles as wives, mothers, grandmothers, daughters, sisters, and so forth, and by being prepared to forcefully defend their doing so if challenged. Senior ISKCON women who act as vulnerable men send the wrong message to younger female devotees who will naturally try to emulate them. Women devotees who insist on performing male duties also indirectly declare to the public that our movement has brought into the perverse secular conception of gender equality. This is all the more absurd because many non devotee women, even in the West, are articulately opposite to feminism. Opposition to feminism should not be misconstrued as opposition to females. Even thousands of years after their presence in the world, glorious women such as Savitri, Damayanti, Devahuti, Kunti, and Draupadi are still honored within Vedic culture. But even such exalted women observed social codes and remained in the background, consciously subordinate to and in shelter of men. Undoubtedly, there are many advanced women devotees in ISKCON today, and as respectable ladies, it behooves them to follow the role models of Kunti and others. Okay, so we are moving to section 2 of this book. So before moving, I would like to ask if anybody has any question to ask, then they might ask one question so that we can answer them, and I can request some other devotee to read. If nobody has any question, then we can proceed further. Okay. Siddhanitai Prabhu, are you there? If you are there, you can read it. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Siddhanitai Prabhu. No, he is not there. Okay. Shubhankar Das. If you can hear me, then you can click the yes and you can start reading, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Prabhuji,
Starting, Prabhu.
you have a mic with you?
Yes, Prabhu.
So you can read some two topics, Prabhu, from here, so that I can, after this, you can, some other devotee can read. Okay, this one topic you can read because this is a little bit bigger. Okay,
Yes, Prabhu.
section 2, you can start.
Fulfilling women's potential as mothers. In every traditional culture in the world, it was axiomatically understood that a woman's primary role is that of mother, which should be obvious because the female body is biologically made for giving birth. As stated in the Manu Samhita, women were created to be mothers. Yet, feminists consider that to be a stay at home mother and housewife is the most absurd, demeaning, anti female thing that a woman could do. They insist that women should be ambitious to achieve and do something to make their mark. They maintain that women should not be tried to hearth and home but should realize their full potential as politicians, soldiers, airline pilots, and so on. Although a number of women have indeed achieved top paying positions, most women, including some are highly educated, end up in dull, low paying jobs and cannot find work at all. But because of the deep materialism that has overtaken society, it has become a necessity for women to join the workforce. They have been duped by impious feminists and greedy business magnates into believing that they need more money to maintain unnecessary what Srila Prabhupada called unnecessary necessities. Women are exhorted to maximize their potential, but what about the natural potential of a woman's body for bearing children? Undeniably, the female psychological constitution is specialized for bearing and rearing children. And because these activities are natural for women, it follows that women are generally happy when they are able to engage in them and unhappy when they cannot. Although feminists like to present women as being morally superior to men on account of women's natural propensity for nurturing, they nonetheless encourage women to engage in occupations for which that propensity is actually detrimental. For example, a nurturing and caring attitude in business, diplomacy, or politics is typically regarded as a weakness, as it invites opponents who are all too willing to take advantage of it. Better to let the man tend to those kinds of occupations for which their psychological makeup is optimized. In the natural course of life, the mother
Psychophysical makeup is optimized,
is
not
Prabhu,
psychology.
for
It's
which
not.
their psychophysical
Uh,
makeup is optimized.
Prabhuji,
In the nat-
one second. Your mic is there, na? It's very near to your mouth. That's why that
okay, Prabhu.
his sound is coming. You just keep little bit away from your mouth, and then you can speak.
Okay, Prabhu.
Yeah,
In the
yeah.
natural course of life, the
Yes, this is.
motherly nurturing spirit, which is so intrinsic to womanhood, manifests even in small girls from the youngest age. As I have seen in traditional villages of Bengal, young girls, even from the age of 4 or 5, without any training or inducement, automatically start caring for babies, picking them up, carrying them around, and soothing them when they cry. But nowadays, the motherly inclination is crushed at the outset by feminism. In the current demonic society, young girls are taught you should become a doctor or a lawyer, or a head of state or a business magnate, or an airline pilot. Why do you want to be a housewife? Feminists have labeled the natural female inclination for motherly affection as foolish. How horrible! Emotionally and psychologically, A young child needs to be with his mother, and a mother needs to be with her child. This is seen even in animals like cows and female monkeys, who become almost mad with distress if forcibly separated from their offspring. Therefore, even if a woman becomes materially successful, she will always remain frustrated because of transgressing her natural psychology. Recently, one woman at the top of her profession, the head of a corporate giant, created a stir by admitting that working women like to pretend that they can have it all, that is, an intensive professional life and also being a dutiful parent. But the truth is that they cannot. She said that women cannot properly strike a work-home balance and related how she would die of guilt for being a bad mother. A mother's real duty is to actually be a mother, not in the name only, while being out at work all day and largely unavailable to her children. But modernized women would rather be busy pursuing a career or watching TV or doing something according to their own choice. I know of one man from South India whose wife refused to follow him when his company transferred him to a city in North India. She didn't want to relinquish her employment with the bank, so she divorced him and kept her job. Actually, there are many such cases. Indeed, numerous women nowadays do not want to marry at all, being more interested in money, ambition, and career. And if they can be persuaded to marry, they don't want to have children. But if they can be persuaded to have children, they do not want to look after them. They want to get back to work, to their career, which they value more than their family. It is an insane, unnatural, cruel society. Materially ambitious women take trouble both directly and indirectly for others. They cannot be good wives, they cannot be truly happy, and they simply cause an imbalance and disharmony in society. Undoubtedly, modern woman has proven herself capable in many areas that previously were all male preserves. But at what cost? Family, the quintessential building block of a smoothly functioning society, has deteriorated rapidly since women turned their attention turned their attention away from the home. Even if a woman is as talented and efficient as a man or more so, is that really a legitimate reason for her to pursue a career over and above her duties at home? Not according to Krishna, who states it is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's own nature are never affected by sinful reactions. In this regard, Srila Prabhupada has written, everyone should think that he is engaged in a particular type of occupation by Rishikesha, the master of the senses, and by the result of the work in which one is engaged, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, should be worshipped. If one thinks always in this way, in full Krishna consciousness, then by the grace of the Lord, he becomes fully aware of everything. That is the perfection of life. Everyone is obligated to perform specific duties for the sake of upholding peace and harmony in society, even if one feels more inclined to do the duty of another. Because failure of the Varnashrama system results in an unwanted Varna Sankara population, and since women are naturally more directly responsible for bearing and rearing new members of society than men are, women have a special obligation to dedicate themselves to their duties as wives and mothers. This is a more important service to society than any other occupation they could possibly take up. By trying to compete with, dominate, and outdo men, women have simply exacerbated the confusion and imbalance in today's highly disturbed world. At home, the wife's feminine qualities are supposed to relieve the husband's stress, but in nuclear families there are often explosions after the husband and wife return from work, both with frazzled nerves. Women do the best service as loving homemakers who provide a heaven of comfort for their husband and children. Their prime duty is to be a wife and mother. Mother does not mean merely the biological function of giving birth, but an embodiment of self sacrifice, nurturing, compassion, and comforting. To actually care for children is a full time job, a 24-hour responsibility, and a major challenge. And babies require exclusive attention. Both parents are permanently on call and may go days without proper sleep. Although many fathers also take much of the burden, still, the contribution of the mother is irreplaceable. For instance, only she can breastfeed, and actually, a woman's innate psychology is to enjoy being a mother and sacrificing for her family. Mother's love, in abundance, is essential for raising good children. It is by doing their duty as wives and mothers that women realize their potential. As exemplars of selfishness, which Varnashrama Dharma is meant to inculcate, mothers are vital in contributing to social stability, good population, family values, and religious culture. But feminism suppresses selfless motherly tendencies. You have to get a job and work hard, prove yourself, have a career, be a success. Brashness and aggressiveness are encouraged as better qualities for a career woman than shyness and respectability. Women are so caught up from reality that they think that any recommendation for a woman to do what is natural and best for her, what she instinctively wants to do, is misleading her into a life of exploitation. At some point in time, humankind might wake up to the amazing discovery that it is natural for women to like being a mother. When this natural desire is curbed and women are misguided to not have children or to have as few as possible so that they can have the freedom to work like asses in the marketplace, then actual human society degrades to the level of Dvipada Pashu, two-legged animals. Children are the victims. Feminists like to portray women as victims of chauvinistic men, but actually the whole ethos of feminism and sexual emancip- emancipation creates a downward spiral whereby especially children suffer. In this age, illicit connection with women will render many women and children uncared for. Circumstantially, the women will try to become independent of the protection of men, and marriage will be performed as a matter of formal agreement between man and woman. In most cases, the children will not be taken care of properly. Children need parents who are physically present to care for them, who are willing to make the sacrifices that a parenting entails, not that the parents are so busy working at their jobs that the children hardly see them. Srila Prabhupada related, in big cities like Calcutta and Bombay, they are coming early in the morning from home and going home at night, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, and then sleep for 2 or 3 hours and again go to work. So there is a story that a little child, when his father comes back, he is asleep, and when the father goes out of home, he is asleep. So one night he saw one man lying there. So he is asking his mother, "Who is this man?" The term latchkey child refers to those lonely souls who return from school to an empty home because their parent or parents are away at work. It also refers to a child who is often left at home with little parental supervision. Similarly, uncared for are children of devotee parents who are so preoccupied with devotional activities, such as outside preaching, that they don't give their children the attention they need. A basic duty of a mother is to feed her family, but neglected children have to get something from the fridge or from a fast food joint or store. Their mother is absent, too busy to give them proper nourishing food, served with love. But in any sane culture, it is a mother's life and pleasure to have children, look after them, cook for them, and feed them. If at all there is to be consideration of rights, the women who out of selfishness pursue their own interests might consider their children's right to have a real mother. A part-time mother lets her children know that she has higher priorities than to care for them. Neglected children can intuitively understand that their mother considers them a nuisance. Similarly, if a woman goes through 3 or 4 husbands, then her children can palpably sense that she is more interested in her own happiness than in maintaining a stable family environment. Moreover, parents who do not care for their children will
Environ.
surely not be
It
cared
is
for.
Hare Krishna. It is not environment. It is called environ, not
Yes,
environment.
Prabhu.
Just
Yes, Prabhu.
environ. Okay, okay.
Maintaining a stable family environment. Moreover, parents who do not care for their children will surely not be cared for in old age by their children. Children who have not known love will have none in their heart. Feminism is breeding generations of children who, being angry at the whole society, become attracted to cruelty and to ideologies of violence. Severe psychological disorders, substance abuse, and criminality are ripe among youth today. Is there any link between school shootings and the culture of selfishness, whereby women are encouraged to neglect their offspring? Frustration due to unrealistic expectations. Increasingly common in the Western world are pangs of girls as young as 12 who indiscriminately attack others with knives, rob them, who use the money for drinking, drugs, and other sinful purposes. The prey may be women or men, old or young, and sometimes these vicious little girls even kill their victims. When I was growing up in Britain, armed gangs of boys were rare except in a few of the worst areas of the country, and juvenile violence would hardly go beyond fistfights. Gangs of girls were unimaginable. Some years ago, shortly after returning to India from the West, I related to a young American devotee couple something that I had read in a London newspaper about girl gangs. The couple was not at all surprised, explaining that they were from Detroit, where girl gangs had been around for years. In that news article, the reporter analyzed that one major reason that girls join gangs is out of frustration. From birth, they are told, you can do it, you can make it, get out and conquer the world. But not everyone can be a great material success. And these girls become increasingly frustrated due to unreal expectations.
Okay, Prabhu. I'll read some other devotee to read. Thank you very much.
Thank you, bro.
Thank you, thank you. Oh, Krishna. Ah, mm, Siddhartha Prabhu is not there in the line. Okay, Shiv Kumar. Shiv Kumarji, I have given you the access to the mic. I've given you access to the mic, so you can click yes and start reading.
Yes, Prabhu. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, you're audible. Little bit. Actually, it is your. I think you have the mic with you, but you can hold it so that it will be uniform voice. Otherwise, sometimes you move
Mm-hmm.
your head here and there. The mic also moves here and there, and the sound is little bit low sometimes, little bit high. Like that, it happens. So I wanted to tell you before. So you hold it in one place, and then in such a way that that hissing sound doesn't happen, and at the same time the sound is sequentially good for the whole session what you are reading. Is it okay,
Okay,
Prabhu?
okay, Prabhu.
Please continue.
Okay. Early and late marriage. In a letter to concerned parent, Srila Prabhupada wrote, to protect them, women must have husband, and it is recommended they should be married at very early age. Then the wife will remain always chaste and devoted to her husband. At such young age, from the first night onwards, she can never for a moment forget him, being still child and unspoiled. Therefore, she becomes the perfect chaste wife, and in those times the wife was so much devoted to her husband that she would voluntarily die in the fire of his cremation, unable to live without him. Myself, I was very young when I got married, and my wife was 11 years only. But there is no question of separation in our marriage belief. Neither your daughter will ever be separated from that boy. That is their vow. Rather, it is when people are little grown up, when they have got little independence and their own ways of doing things, then if they marry, there is often difficulty to adjust, just as it is more difficult to bend the bamboo when it is yellow. Similarly, to an American female disciple, Srila Prabhupada explained the Vedic principle of early marriage for girls. In Vedic society, no girl was allowed to remain independent and unmarried. Independence for women means they become like prostitutes struggling to capture some man who will take care of her. In this way, the so called independent woman has to work very hard to make herself attractive by artificially wearing cosmetics, miniskirts, and so many other things. Formerly, the girl would be married to a suitable boy at a very early age, say 6 years old. But although a girl was married early, she did not stay with her husband immediately, but was gradually trained in so many ways how to cook, clean, and serve her husband in so many ways up until the time of her puberty. So, all the time there was no anxiety because a girl would know I have got a husband, and the boy would know I have got this girl as my wife. Therefore, when the boy and girl would come of age, there was no chance of illicit sex life. And the psychology is the first boy that a girl accepts in marriage, that girl will completely give her heart to, and this attachment on the girl's side for her husband becomes more and more strong. Thus, if a girl gets a good husband, one who has accepted a bona fide spiritual master and is firmly fixed up in his service, automatically the wife of such a good husband inherits all the benefits of his spiritual advancement. So you are fortunate. Go on in this present attitude, serve your husband always, and in this way your life will be perfect. And together, husband and wife go back home, back to Godhead. Srila Prabhupada pointed out that it is not beneficial for human society when women remain unmarried because they will be exploited instead of protected. They will not be happy and bad offspring will be produced. So, every woman should be married, and the sooner the better. This does not mean that an unmarried woman should rush into marrying. Marriage should be entered into carefully, but it should not be inordinately delayed. In the West, however, it is still considered scandalous for unmarried girls in their early teens to have babies. Unfortunately, such opprobrium nourishes the flourishing abortion industry. But Westerners consider it an even greater scandal when girls in their early teens get married before becoming pregnant. This idea is so repugnant to them that they establish non-profit organizations dedicated to rescuing young girls in other countries from arranged marriages at a young age. They are much more comfortable with the idea of girls getting pregnant prior to marriage or having abortions. Now, in India, child marriage, which previously was an intrinsic part of the culture, is literally a crime. Indian law bizarrely prohibits marriage for females before age 18 and for males before 21, yet allows consensual sex from age 16. Hence, it is illegal for a 16-year-old girl to have sex and become pregnant, but illegal for her to marry. Hence, it is legal for a 16-year-old girl to have sex and become pregnant, but illegal for her to marry. With his typical pragmatic, Shastra based reasoning, Srila Prabhupada explained why especially girls should be married young. A young woman who has no husband is called anatha, meaning one who is not protected. As soon as a woman attains the age of puberty, she immediately becomes very much agitated by sexual desire. It is therefore the duty of the father to get his daughter married before she attains puberty. Otherwise, she will be very much mortified by not having a husband. As described in the Srila Prabhupada Leelamrita, according to the Vedic system, a marriage should be carefully arranged by the parents and it should take place before the girl reaches puberty. Gaur Mohan, Srila Prabhupada's father, had gotten his first daughter married in her ninth year, his second daughter at 12 years, and his third daughter at 11. When his second daughter was going on 12, Rajani had said, I shall go to the river and commit suicide if you don't get her married at once. In the Vedic system, there was no courtship, nor was the couple allowed to live together during the first years of their marriage. The young girl would begin serving her husband by cooking for him at her parents' house and coming before him to serve him his meal or by taking part in some other formal exchange. Then, as the boy and girl grew to physical maturity, they would become so lovable to one another that they would be inseparable. The girl would naturally remain faithful to her husband since she would have no association with any other boy as she grew to puberty. A devotee from Europe told me that when his daughter was 5 years old, she asked, when I am going to get married. As Srila Prabhupada explained, a girl should be betrothed while she is still very young, so that she will not have any anxiety in that regard. Only upon attaining puberty would a girl go to live in the husband's home. In some parts of India, this still goes on, but clandestinely. Some years ago, an Indian disciple of mine told me, I want to get my daughter married. I said, well, traditionally she would already be considered of marriageable age. He said, yes, that is what I am talking about. I am going to get her married within the next year. His daughter was 5 years old. According to Manu Samhita 9.90, if 3 years after her having attained puberty, her father has not yet fulfilled his duty to give her away in marriage, she can independently find her own husband. Of course, that is not ideal. Srila Prabhupada dilated on the topic of early marriage for girls in a lecture that was titled The Psychology of Chastity. Late marriage contravenes the natural order. Late marrying women often have problems in conceiving, and children born to them have a high likelihood of congenital or of later developing physical or mental defects. Furthermore, women who do not have children or who put off bearing them are more likely to suffer gynecological problems, including infertility and cancer, as well as breast cancer, because the function of the mammary gland is to produce milk. To suppress that function is unnatural and the reaction is disease. Nowadays, because young women go to school and college and then pursue a career, often their marriage is delayed until around age 30. But by that age, a woman should already have grown up children. Previously, as soon as a girl had reached puberty, she was sent to live with her husband and soon after that would have her first child. And if her first child happened to be female, she could well become a grandmother before the age of 30. Career women consider early marriage to be a burden and even more so consider it a burden to have children. When they are young, they think there are so many men. I can pick one up at any time. But it often happens that when they reach age 30 or so, they start to panic. I'm getting old. My face has a few lines. I need to get married right now. All along, they were saying, I won't get married, I won't get married. And when they finally say, I want to be married, no one wants to marry them because men prefer beautiful young girls, not worn out 30-year-olds who have already been used so many times. So the aging women become desperate. Commonly, women who marry late not only have already lost their character, but also are too old to be flexible. They resent their diminished independence and the challenges that marriage poses to their own plans and goals, and often soon divorce. Another common scenario in India is that of parents unduly waiting to find the perfect match for their daughter, the main consideration being that the groom should earn big money. But when she becomes too old to compete with the younger bells, the parents become desperate and marry her off to anyone, rich, poor, ugly, whatever, whoever agrees to marry her. Arranged marriage. For a girl to choose her own husband is very risky. Overcome by sentiment and infatuation, otherwise called lust, a young girl does not possess the sober discrimination to understand who is right for her. The traditional system is that the parents carefully arrange their child's marriage based on caste, astrological compatibility, taking into account mental, emotional, intellectual, and sexual matching and other considerations. After marriage, the young couple are supported by a social network of mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, and siblings. And even before marriage, from the beginning of the child's life, there is training on how to remain chaste and dutiful in marriage. Still, in India today, arranged marriages are the norm, although this is changing rapidly. The boy and the girl to be married are mutually selected by their parents. Or, in the case of girls, often the girl's older brother or sometimes younger brother determines which boy she will marry, just as Lord Balarama took up the task of arranging Shub- Subhadra Devi's marriage. Nonetheless, often the boy and girl do not choose their would-be spouse, although in many arranged marriages both are given the final say as to whether they will marry the other. As to whether they will marry the other. Liberal humanists deem all this to be inhumane. They insist that one must first love a person before marrying. But what is that so called love? They love, marry, and later divorce. Love, marry, divorce. Love, marry, divorce. And thus the phenomenon known as serial monogamy. It is considered a human right to revoke one's marriage contract at will. But in the traditional Indian system, even though the spouses don't know each other before being married, they remain married until death do us part. So, which is better, the cycle of marriage and divorce, or indissoluble marriage, irrespective of the perceived happiness within it? The answer that one will settle on depends on the predominant mode of nature, guna, that colors one's consciousness. If one is predominated by the mode of passion, then his interest is governed by the desire for sense gratification. As soon as trouble arises in their marriage, persons who are impelled by passion will naturally seek to abrogate their agreement. Srila Prabhupada wrote, a young man and a young woman meet, and the senses drive the young man to see her, to touch her, and to have sexual intercourse. In the beginning, this may be very pleasing to the senses, but the end, or after some time, it becomes just like poison. They are separated, or there is divorce, there is lamentation, there is sorrow, etc. Such happiness is always in the mode of passion. Happiness derived from a combination of the senses and the sense objects is always a cause of distress and should be avoided by all means. Prabhu, should I continue?
One second. Oh, it is a very big topic, huh? Hmm. Okay, Prabhu, we can stop here. Maybe I can tell again. We can read from arranged marriage. We can stop here. No problem.
Okay, Prabhu.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Hare
Prabhu, is
Krishna.
our audio good today?
Actually, your voice is little bit low only, Prabhu. I don't know why.
Okay, I'll try to change the mic, Prabhu.
Yes, Prabhu, please, because it is very low voice. It will, because once it is recorded and goes to the YouTube, the voice becomes more or less. So better it is. My how is my voice? Is as if I am just speaking in your ears.
Yeah,
I
your
think
voice is good
yeah,
and clear.
better you should have a mic wherein it should be very devotees themselves may reduce the volume, but our volume should be very high.
Okay, Prabhu.
Yeah, they can have their control in their own respective systems or mobiles or whatever it is, but from
Hmm.
our side it should be very much audible. That's what is the thing.
Okay, Prabhu.
Okay, Brochi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
So, Hare Krishna, we will conclude our session here and we will meet tomorrow at 6:45. Hare Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindebhi vacha patitanam bhavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo namaha. We'll continue to read from page number 138, Arranged Marriage. Hare Krishna. If you have any questions, then you can ask me in my phone 9429835232. So that's at that time. 4298352. Thank you.